That's when there's commercials for just things that you're like, who's paying for this? Like the whole got milk ad. So like milk just bands together for these ads.
Yeah, Big Milk.
I've never trusted Big Milk.
We got the 5 families of milk, Gorelick, Hood. Like, they're all together. Welcome back, everyone, to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if it's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about Who's the Boss? Who's the Boss won 196 episodes over 8 seasons on ABC. Today we're talking about episode 1, which was called Pilot, originally airing September 20th, 1984. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me, as always, the boys, Joe, Ferg, Nick, and Gordo. What's going on, guys?
Hey, yo.
Oh, hey, oh. Oh, Mona. Mona.
I was glad that we got the Heyo OA in episode 1. I wasn't sure if that would happen. And just to clue everybody in, welcome everyone to week 2 of our extravaganza. So for the month of June, each week we're putting out a different Tony Danza sitcom. So last week we came out with Taxi. This is Who's the Boss. We're doing 4 different sitcoms in order that they came out. Thank you to Tony Danza, who's had so many shows.
Yeah, after this will be our 5th Danza show.
When all is said and done, yeah, because we did Baby Talk before all of this. And I was trying to think before, is there another person who we could do a month like that, who had like at least 4 shows that they like had like a prevalent starring role in?
Not with a show with a great pun name like Danza.
That's true. Might not be able to pun it up.
Well, it depends on the actor that we figure out.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is there one?
Oh, I'm sure there's one. What about the dude from Big Bang Theory, which we already covered? From Roseanne, which we already covered. Damn it!
But he didn't like star in multiple shows.
He wouldn't be in the pilot is the problem. Like Sherman Helmsley is in All in the Family, Roseanne, and not Roseanne, Jesus said. All in the Family, Jeffersons, and Amen, but he's not definitely in the pilot of All in the Family.
Yeah, like all 4 shows we're covering this month star Tony Danza as the lead.
I could think of one. What about Bob Newhart?
Oh, yeah.
Newhart is a good one. Newhart, we could probably...
He has 3, at least 3.
The Brady Bunch had all those spinoffs. It would just be Brady.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point isn't like...
I know.
It's like someone who... Bob Newhart's an interesting one. I don't know for ratings for us if it's great to do a whole month of Bob Newhart, but...
I love Bob Newhart. We should have done Bob month and then all the Newhart shows when we did Bob Hart's Abishola. We really fucked that up.
But this is one... Who's the Boss is another show that we've talked about doing forever, and it just felt like we were all just waiting for someone else to pick it.
What about Dick Van Dyke? Wasn't he in?
He was only in the Dick Van Dyke Show, I thought. He's
also in Mary Poppins, which does come up in this episode.
But that's not a sitcom. He was also in Diagnosis Murder, which is a good show.
Wasn't he Mary Tyler Moore's husband?
In the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, it's the other way around.
To continue on. So, Who's the Boss? Obviously an iconic show, but another one of those shows that it was on nonstop when we were kids. I feel like it was always on TV, but not really now. Like, this isn't a show that gets a lot of airtime modern day.
And by not a lot, you mean none.
Yeah.
It was on so nonstop when we were kids that watching the theme song intro in this episode, I could see him running down from third base to home plate. Like I could see all the scenes. Yeah. All the parts that were in the theme song that aren't in the pilot episode. So it definitely burned its brain in our generation.
Is it the same song?
Yeah.
Yeah, same song.
They changed the lyrics though in the 3rd season.
Okay, because I don't really remember the theme song to this. Like, I remember the show.
It's so iconic.
We'll get into that when we get into it.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there too. Like, there's 3 versions of it and all different stuff.
We'll talk about it shortly enough. But yeah, Who's the Boss? I think now is available on Hulu, so it is out there on a streamer. You can watch it.
What's nice for our use too, if it doesn't always happen this way, but you type in Who's the Boss into Google and Hulu pops up on the right-hand side and says, do you want to watch the pilot? Like, I wish it was that easy for every show we covered.
And also, real quick, want to just plug our socials. Go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links to where you can listen to us, our merch page, our socials like Instagram, X, all that stuff. S1E1 pod on those. Give us a follow, hit us up, let us know shows you want us to cover. Just hit us up in general. Talk to us, say hello, let us know how you found us, things like that. And like I said, we got a merch page now. We now sell a few shirts. We don't make a ton of money on the shirts, but it's super cool to see you guys representing our show. And so when you send us pictures in our stuff, that's really cool. So please, by all means, take part if you do so choose.
They did tell us, though, that the highest profit margin was in tote bags. So please go to our merch site, buy a tote bag, go to the grocery store. It's totally fine.
It's totes awesome. That's what they used to say now, right?
Yeah. Not this generation, but yeah, at one point
our
you
generation.
said that.
Totes my goats.
Oh, you're so wacky, Ferg.
And also, IMDb had this as a 6.6 for the series. Rotten Tomatoes didn't have like an overall, but if you go to season 1, it had a 66% critic and a 40% audience, which I thought was kind of crazy.
That seems a lot lower than I would think it would be.
But just season 1. So, I mean, the show did like liven up a little bit as it went on.
It was once Mona started getting more screen time.
I was going to say, once Mona starts dating, because like, the fun thing about Mona, too, is, and Mona, like let's just get into this, right? Mona, one of my several, as a child, older lady sex symbols. She's dating people like younger than us in the show, right? So very much like the Golden Girls.
She's rich, right?
No,
She's just a house mom who likes to bang.
And then Mona, we'll talk about her when we see her, but she's like 55, I think, in this episode.
That's not like crazy. Like,
but again, we had the same thing with Golden Girls. They're not as old as you think they are, but when you're a kid, they seem like they're like grandparents, you know?
Well, that is the age of your grandparents when you're born. They're around their 50s or so, you know, so.
It depends.
But pilot episode filmed 1983, but it didn't get aired for almost a year later. And I guess like the creators of the show, the producers were worried that the show was going to be like rejected at first. And then if it was like pushed as a mid-season replacement, I don't really understand all the details. I didn't read into it much further than that, but kind of interesting to have like the show waiting and like kind of holding back for the right time to debut it, thinking that that'll have a significant impact on its reception.
The funny thing about that, too, is when they finally did decide to debut it, they were like, we'll put it against a show nobody would watch. They put it opposite The Cosby Show, which is like one of the behemoth TV shows of all time.
They knew back then.
They were like, hey, I got a feeling.
And also a fun tidbit as we talk about our extravaganza in the 4 shows we're doing, but 5, you know, if you count Baby Talk and, you know, he's on other stuff, but Who's the Boss was his longest reigning. I thought Taxi would have been close, but Taxi was only 5 seasons. This went a full 8.
I think the way Taxi was in syndication, and when we were younger, it felt like it was, because it was so much older looking. Like, Taxi looks like it's from a different generation than Who's the Boss.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Not really, though, because Taxi only ends a couple years before this starts. A year, maybe? I think 1 year before it's filmed, so it's not that far away.
You know what the difference is? This has a good theme song, so it gives you longevity. Because even if you hate the show, you leave it on for the theme.
You know what the theme song of Taxi is called, though, right?
What?
Taxi Man?
Tony, Angela. You remember my hat from last week? Come on. We had a whole conversation about this.
He did represent with the hat last week. I don't know if I would say Who's the Boss is necessarily bigger in 2024 than Taxi.
I think I agree with you. I think Taxi is a more revered show historically looking back.
I don't think either of them are popular per se now.
Well, Here's the thing. Tony Danza is going to have his popularity, but I think you have like Andy Kaufman and Christopher Lloyd and all these people in Taxi because it's a larger ensemble cast.
Danny DeVito,
right? Where Alyssa Milano in this, right? She had a very huge 90s, right? But I don't know if you were to ask, like if I was to ask my 13-year-old cousin, do you know who Alyssa Milano is? I don't know if necessarily he would, but he probably knows who Danny DeVito is. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, one's still active, one really isn't, is really the only thing.
No, she's still working. It's just, you know.
Yeah, but in what?
She's still doing TV stuff.
Is she?
Yeah, she was on that Wet Hot American Summer 10 Years Later show, like a couple years ago.
In any event, to get into this actual show itself, we start and we see Tony and his daughter, Samantha, which Tony Danza and Alyssa Milano, as we just said. And they're walking out of their New York City apartment and they're like heading towards a super ugly van that Tony owns.
They're also in like Death Wish 3 New York City too. They're in like a weird like back alley drug zone New York.
I've brought this up. It's like every time that you try to depict New York City at this point in time, like especially like the late 70s into the 80s, there is no angle you can be that you can glorify the city at all. It's just this disgusting trash heap at every point.
I looked up, so in 1983 when this was filmed, there was 161,000 violent crimes in New York City, and the most recent stats are like 69,000 violent crimes.
Nice.
So like almost 100,000 less violent crimes per year. So I mean, it was not the family-friendly Bubba Shrimp New York that it is now.
Well, I mean, to be fair, too, that's not terrible considering the size of the population.
I mean, I don't know. I'd probably say that 100,000 less violent crimes is good.
You have like hundreds of thousands of violent crimes. Population aside, that's still a lot.
Sure, but you have to take it with a grain of salt that there is a lot more people.
No, because it's other highly populated areas where they're not just shooting and stabbing
Not like
each other all
New
the time.
York. Not like New York size.
Well, then how about this for murders? There was 2,000 murders in New York that year and 500 last time, right? So it dropped by 75%. That's a pretty big jump.
But it's like also like 10 million people that live there.
Well, 10 million minus 2,000, I guess, right? 9,800,000.
I mean, it's not a million.
Gordo, I don't think you see the point. There's still a lot of people in New York now, and the violent crimes have gone down exponentially.
Sure.
I didn't check, though, the suicide rate for paying $300 dinners. That is probably a high statistic that we'll get into.
But yeah, essentially what's going on here is we're finding out that Tony and Samantha are moving out of the city, that he's trying to get his daughter out of this area because of things like crime and stuff like that. She just got into a fight. Apparently it was her versus 3 dudes, but I guess she fared well.
Good for her.
As a tough kid. But yeah, he found a new job. He's going to get out of New York, and you have that old lady out of the window who's like, but you love New York. It's like, well, I love my daughter more.
I love my daughter.
Anybody track who she is, by the way?
In real life, I know she makes a lot of appearances on this show throughout the years.
Yeah, she's a recurring character on this, but you know in Ghostbusters, when they buy the firehouse, there's office spaces on the 3rd floor. It's like, we should stay here tonight, sleep here to check it out. And Dan Aykroyd gets all excited. She's the lady who has that, like, back and forth with the real estate agent.
Oh, I don't acknowledge the,
Oh, god damn it. I didn't think I was bringing up Ghostbusters and that you would have some bullshit to say about the bad Ghostbusters you were in.
They have a bit of interaction, but essentially that's all that came of that scene, and then they drive off. And there's that little thing too, as they drive off, you have like off camera, the other guy who must live in the building who's yelling down to Mrs. Rosini.
Like the guy who works 3rd shift who's super pissed that she's screaming at 8 a.m.
He's like, shut up down there, I'm trying to sleep. She goes, go sit on your hard hat. Oh, classic New York.
It was basically the like TV rated version of In Coming to America. It's like, hey buddy, fuck you. He's like, yes, fuck you too. Yelling at the apartments.
And then as it drives off, they kind of use that to be the driving becomes the intro. So now you're getting all these various shots of the van driving to the intro song, which we've
all been on this road too. What road is that? That's like 84, I think, between New York City and Connecticut.
It's the drive from New York City to Connecticut, so for sure have driven that way.
Yeah, don't ask me routes because I just followed navigation.
And well, I remember doing it on MapQuest, right when we first started going to New York in the early 2000s.
So I'll say this as far as the intro goes. I know, Joe, what you were talking about earlier, same thing, especially the baseball scene for whatever reason is like ingrained in my head.
Burnt in, yeah.
But you take that out and you're watching this for the first time, this intro kind of sucks.
Well, they didn't have clips yet.
It's just boring.
Well, it's like the intro to Taxi. It's just a car driving around and pulling up to a place. Like it's the exact
same thing. Yeah, but this one has
thing.
a good song, not a depressing, boring song.
Angela's a very good song, but I do love this song.
I like it because like it shows, them leaving the city to like this, bougie suburb. Like I think it's fitting to the actual show. But as far as like if you're gonna isolate it as just an intro, then yes, it's pretty boring.
Now, this was literally like a pilot only thing. By episode 2, they start using all those other clips.
Oh, you mean they added the clip of Tony singing Angela naked?
The other part of it that you can't not get out of your brain, yeah.
That I was gonna say that I do remember. Like I said, I remember the clips.
Opening the shower on her.
Yep.
But I don't know, just nothing special. You know, it is what it is. It's funny how much just throwing in some clips of the show, though, can turn an thing to like timeless, like remembered, because the song's the same, right? Usually like we focus all our attention on the song itself, but the song alone, I guess, is not enough. Like there is something to go with the visual there.
Yeah, I don't really remember the song, like I was saying a little earlier. Like,
I don't know how you don't remember the song.
I'm with Fergus this one. I find it crazy the song isn't just like tattooed in your brain.
Oh yeah, I remember the song.
only memes up here.
If you remember back when we did Growing Pains, the mother was like humming the theme to Who's the Boss when she was in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
It was like their little sneaky, like, wink, wink.
Man, 80s TV shows are so much better than everything now.
Crossover stuff is just fun in general. Like, it always, anytime like someone from a different show crosses into the world of another show, like, it's always exciting.
I love that on they used to do that a lot on TGIF.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like Urkel would show up at like the Tim Allen house or whatever. He'd be like, "Okay, sure, we're doing it."
When we were kids and cartoons would do it, like, my mind was fucking like blown.
You'd be like, "Why is Wheels from the Burger King Kids Club in this episode of Transformers? This doesn't make any sense at all." Earth, wind, water,
he's
wheels.
actually a Decepticon.
So post intro, we get to the first scene of the actual episode. And we just see a kid sitting in his living room. It's Jonathan. We come to find out he's kind of hanging out with his pet snake, and the doorbell rings. And you get you hear Angela off screen upstairs. And it's like, is someone going to get that? And Jonathan goes to look at the door, but he doesn't actually open the door. He just peeks through. And she was she comes down later. And she's like, "What are you doing?" But honestly, he was so young, I don't think he should have just been opening the door.
No.
It's 1983 in Connecticut.
Yeah, 1983 in a Connecticut suburb. He'd open the door for anybody. That is not even kind of a problem.
That's how the serial killers win.
That is how serial killers win. I mean, that's back when we were kids, right? Where it was remember safe word stuff, right? Where it was if somebody says that your mom's been injured and they want you to get in their car to go to the hospital, have a safe word.
That was still 10 plus years after this.
That is true. This was recorded 2 years before most of us were born. 3 for some, yeah.
But what a sign of I don't know, for me just getting older, I guess. We talk about it more and more, I guess, the older we're getting. But as soon as I'm watching it, that's the first thing flagging in my mind. Is what are you doing? Tell him to get the door. He's a child.
I don't think Judith Light's going to fight off a robber.
I really sat down and thought about the time, and I was like, yeah, it's a different age.
Well, we've talked about it before. We're the last of the feral children for the most part, right? The generation of just go out and be home, do whatever you want to do and be home when the sun comes up. That's not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, can you imagine telling your kids to do that now? Right?
Never.
It would be really tough to say oh, just go, do whatever. But in the grand scheme, we were all pretty harmless as far as the shit we got in. As far as the bad stuff we did, it was pretty harmless.
Well, I think the fear is never what the kids will do. It's the world around them and what someone can do to the kids.
But also, we all left the state and stuff too as kids, right? I remember days where it was you're 12 or 13 or whatever, be oh, let's when we used to first start on shows and stuff, be oh, there's a show in Rhode Island, be oh, we can get the commuter rail and we'll be back in time before anybody knows it. If you got kidnapped in a different state, your parents would have no idea where to even start with that.
I would say a little older than 12, 13, but
That's when I started going on shows.
Out of state?
Yeah, we went to Providence shows.
I don't know if I was going quite that young. Probably a couple years later.
I was definitely going around 14, 15 because I remember we took the bus all the way. We took the first train back and then we took the bus to school.
I mean, the only thing I was doing at that age was the Warp Tour. I don't remember traveling to any other states for shows.
I was going to a lot of shows, but I think I went to my first show when I was 12. My first concert was when I was 12. And that was with my dad to go see Hole.
Your poor dad. What a good sport.
It's funny though. It's who's out there? It's just a guy in his big white van. We'll let him in.
Yeah, right.
Not even big with it. His van with Bondo spots and like logos rusted off of it. Like, don't trust that at all. There's no markings.
There's free candy on the side.
It's okay. He used to play professional baseball. Oh, okay. Well, then get right in.
Oh, so he's a baseball player and he's a garbage man who also happens to be a good field goal kicker.
And a boxer.
And a boxer,
yeah.
I think in real life he was a boxer, though, right?
Yeah, real life he was a boxer.
Yeah, I know in Taxi he was, but Angela runs downstairs and she has like an exchange with her son. And it's like why didn't you answer the door? And it's, like he's playing dumb. She has like that offhanded comment as she's going to get the door, like, Jonathan, I'm warning you, Joan Crawford is my idol. But that's like a Mommy Dearest reference. And it's like,
but Mommy Dearest came out in 81, so that's like very in the zeitgeist still.
Right. So this comes up a couple more times, and I was going to bring it up later, but Joe, I think this is one of those, if this was a modern show, you would be mad at a reference like that.
I would be, and there's one where I actually have a prop today, and not because I planned on it, because a name came up and I started laughing, and I literally pulled something from 2 feet away from me. So, like, I think I agree. Look, I hate the modern world. It's not so much the pop culture thing. I just don't like referencing modern culture, I guess.
So I feel like this show is victim of that. This is the first time, but there were a few times where they make like those types of modern references that does date the show now watching it like 40 years later.
For example, I didn't get that joke.
Exactly.
I had to look it up.
You're not a Faye Dunaway fan?
No.
Towering Inferno with O.J. Simpson?
No.
Bonnie and Clyde?
Okay.
Sure, I know them. Yeah. Angela gets the door and Tony's there. And she doesn't know why he's there. And he's telling her, oh, I'm here for the job. And I guess like her mother's the one who's been sourcing and interviewing for the housekeeper job at the house. Right off the bat, I thought it was weird. Like later on, we see her boss make comments to him about being a male housekeeper. But I thought it was weird when a woman says like, you can't be a housekeeper, you're a man. Like it just seemed very odd for the woman's perspective to be that way.
Different times.
Yeah, at that time, it was not seen as equal opportunity.
No, but she's a woman who's like a strong role in the workforce. So it seems weird for her to be like, that's a woman's job. She's breaking that mold herself.
She's still a woman with a kid at home, and she's bringing a strange man into the house. It's not like the way you're thinking of it. Like,
but that's how she presented it.
Yeah, well, you see, as a dad myself to a doodle, to my dog, I wouldn't
it makes
want...
me fucking insane when you say it.
As a dad, that pisses me off.
Yeah, I get to actually say that. How dare you?
I wouldn't let a strange man in my house to be around my dog.
To Joe and Ferg, how do you feel knowing that Gordo will do more to celebrate Father's Day than the two of you?
No, I am.
Wait, Gordo, dogter, like as in daughter?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's what you're going for. Did you write that down? Have you give notes this week, Gordo?
No, that's just what we call her.
You doing shtick?
But he might celebrate more, but he's going to be paying for it all himself, where people will buy me stuff as a real father. So,
what are you talking about? My wife is going to buy it for me from the dog. But bam.
I don't believe you.
I hope I get...
Photoshopped photos of the dog from your wife with no leash. Is that what you're hoping for?
Beautiful art. I got a card one year with a paw print on it. It was very cute.
All right. Well, moving right along. As they're having this conversation and she's kind of doing that whole, I'm sorry, you're not, what I'm looking for. Tony notices Jonathan sitting in the living room and he addresses, hey, you must be Jonathan. He goes and talks to him and you see he's like pretty good with the kid right away. So, already it's like he's endearing himself to the family by making that connection with Jonathan right off the bat.
Calls him what, King of the Reptiles?
King of the Reptiles. He's like, that's me.
It's funny because this would never happen today just because of the internet. It's like she would have researched his LinkedIn and all this other stuff. You'd never hire someone.
Well, I mean, but we're going to find out in a moment, but Mona kind of did all that stuff.
Yeah, Mona knows everything.
Yeah, Mona
She went to the LinkedIn of the 1980s. You're a priest.
Yeah.
And you actually see in this conversation too, there's the whole thing with Angela and Jonathan about how she doesn't want the snake downstairs. Tony steps in like he's very comfortable asserting himself into situations throughout this whole episode really quickly, hardly knowing these people. But
I think he's just got a good dad sense.
yeah, with Jonathan especially though, and the way he tells him like, you got to pick between the snake and your mother, and the snake doesn't pay your allowance. And Jonathan's like, good point. All right, well, the money talks, and he like heads up with the snake. So he's like, right off the bat, you're already checking off some boxes. Like Angela's already, she's still super hesitant, doesn't want him to be the person, but already you're seeing that he's good with the kid. He's good at talking to him and resolving issues.
Yeah, I thought that he was a little out of line though.
See, I didn't get that. I don't think his demeanor was out of line.
Throughout the episode, like when he starts like threatening him a little later on in the episode.
That's not a real threat.
Not threaten him, but I'll say,
I've got a gun, you little fuck. Like, he's not like mean.
But I'll say to defend Gordo to a degree, here and in other places, the way he just steps in, like he barely has, like there's a point where, stuff that goes on later. He's had this job for like 8 seconds and he feels comfortable talking to them like he has an ironclad contract where he cannot be released at any time.
Where I think it's inappropriate is how he touches the kids. And I don't mean like in a sexual way, but like you just mad at him. He's putting his arm around the kid and stuff.
That I would say are more, the times were different more than anything. Because people were very touchy back then.
I was like, don't touch my kid, you weirdo.
As a father, I would not let strange man touch my dog too.
The other thing too is, as I speak to all my fellow WAPs, Italian guys, and Tony is a super Italian dude. They are
okay
very
for
touchy.
Tires. I don't think you can do that in other ways.
To all of Jay's stupid WAP takes.
All right, I'm sorry.
Oh,
So
boy.
to those of you guineas watching or listening along right now, but it is like Italian culture is very touchy. Like all my life, like everyone around me was always super touchy.
As we were talking about before the episode started, it's touchy, it's glass walls, it's black and white tiles, it's and delicious stuffed shells.
Hutches built into the walls.
Don't forget the lasagna.
Can't forget lasagna Mondays.
Stuffed shells are essentially lasagna.
They are.
Yeah, but it's like nachos. Like, when you go to a restaurant and they make nachos,
It's lasagna of the sea.
Lasagna of the sea. Like, if you had like a Chili's or something and you order nachos, they would come and be like 6 very big individualized nachos. Stuffed shells is like having to make like 10 smaller lasagnas all at once. Like
but there's
amount
no
of work
meat
doesn't
in
seem
stuffed
worth
shells.
it.
I thought isn't it just cheese, or am I thinking manicotti?
Manicotti's in that family too. Like,
They're pretty similar, yeah.
but at the end of the day, some lasagnas don't have any meat either, by the way.
That's not lasagna.
I usually make all cheese lasagna.
Really? I would go the opposite direction if I had to.
All
I would
meat?
go all meat.
Stop Nick dead in his tracks.
It's just ground beef, buddy.
Nick's lasagna is just a meatloaf.
No, it's more of a like a chop suey, I guess. But also, did you know that we are the only people who call that American chop suey?
Is it a Northeast thing?
Yeah, it's a Northeast thing. It's called goulash, American goulash, everywhere
Yeah,
else.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I don't like that either, yeah.
No, I'm sick with American chop suey.
Yeah, goulash sounds like gross.
One time, Nick, at the job that you and I used to work with, Nick and I worked at a gas station convenience store for a while, and they opened a second one up, and it had like a food counter, and they were really excited about it. They were like, hey, we're serving hot food, like go check it out. And we had to do some dumb thing like paint lines on the sidewalk or something. We would do whatever. And they were like, hey, well, you're here. Do you want some food? So we all got food, and one of the girls was like, do you want to try the American chop suey? And I was like, sure. And she gave me like an individual sized cup of it. And I was like, it's actually a pretty good American chop suey. And I came to work the next day, and our boss was like, did you steal American chop suey from the gas station last night? And I was like, do you know the sentence you just said to me? What are you talking about? Like, there was some communication breakdown where they expected me to pay for it, and I didn't. And I was like in trouble with like the big boss because they thought I like came in and dine and dashed at the gas station chop suey. It was like, we gotta have a conversation about this. There's no way that's what happened.
Stupid ass job.
So the conversation's continuing between Angela and Tony now that they're alone because Jonathan brought the snake upstairs. She just keeps telling him like, hey, listen, you're not what I want for this job. And he's like, but I gave up my apartment, and like your mother said I had the job. And she's like, well, do you have any references? No. Do you have any experience? No. well, how many jobs have you had as a housekeeper? Well, if I get this one, then I'll have one.
No, he has references though, and it's brought up later that he was in charge of the YMCA.
Well, he says he has no references, so he doesn't.
No, I know. I don't know why he doesn't bring that up though. Mona has to bring it up to go to bat for him later.
This is right when Mona comes in. By the way, she comes in on her bicycle.
Woo!
If only it was that bicycle seat.
Mona originally intended to be Angela's sister, so Mona wasn't supposed to be her mother on the show.
Yeah, I
originally.
saw that.
But they couldn't find which I thought was weird. They were unable to find an age-appropriate actress that they liked for the
what
part.
Does that mean?
How many people did you audition?
Anywhere in New York or Los Angeles and throw a dart? Like, there's people, there are a million actors.
Yeah. We need to find a woman in her 30s or 40s. And they're like, we got nobody. Sorry.
And Mona was on Soap, which I feel like would be a fun one for us to cover someday. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that before. That was a big, late in the afternoon Comedy Central show.
That's been requested.
Has it?
Times
Awesome.
by people.
I'm familiar with. I don't know if I've ever watched it. So
Billy Crystal was the other big star. It's basically like a parody of soap operas, but done at night. It's weird, but it's pretty funny.
So right off the bat, when Mona walks in, she's really trying to sell Tony to Angela, right off. And, look, what a reliable person. He was here right on time. And, saying all these nice things about him. And we find out, she really did, go above and beyond to, get references and stuff for him. She did look into it.
Yeah, she's got a crush on him, so she knew he was the one.
Yeah, I think she was just really into him. But, yeah, because she brings up Tony's daughter as well. And Tony goes and runs outside let me go get her. So while Mona is alone with Angela, she keeps going on he loves children. I talked to the guy at the Y and I talked to his priest. And it's wow, she really did do a lot of background stuff to learn all about him.
I mean, that guy's going to be around her grandbaby.
No, for sure. Again, I appreciate that kind of effort, but it's thorough. And the fact that how many candidates were there realistically? Is she doing this kind of detective work on everybody?
I don't know. Think of Mrs. Doubtfire, right? They put one ad in the paper. And, I mean, to be fair, Robin Williams crosses out and makes it so no one can call. But he calls as 7 different people.
True.
You think Tony Danza did the same thing?
I am Job. Tony Danza just calling, hey, I am Job. It's no, thank you.
Hey, yo, hey, yo.
Hey, it'd be Tony Doubtfire, hey.
This here, though, I wanted to bring up real quick because this is when Tony makes the joke and the crowd pops pretty good. Or Mona makes the joke and the crowd pops pretty good about, meaningless work. A man can do it, right? So you start getting the actual, very positive vibes of this show. But this is when she says he's a young Henny Youngman. And I don't know if you guys know Henny Youngman. He is the king of the one-liners. You remember him from Goodfellas? His famous joke is, take my wife, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was Henny Youngman, and then right next to my desk, I pulled out the book of Henny Youngman's greatest, 500 all-time great one-liners.
Can you just thumb through that and give us the one?
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to just
5
give you
is a
some
lot.
random ones. I'll give a couple, okay?
A couple random.
And this is all
Random
totally
page.
random.
Oh, what a fun little book to buy.
You love stand-up comedy. This is a classic stand-up comedian. You can't rip on me for this. This is not quirky. This is classic stand-up comedy.
Yeah, I'll give that one to Joe. That's not very quirky. That's just collectible.
No, it's quirky.
When I go to Israel... Oh, I'm not
Yes. Of all pages.
Check out.
Yes.
I'm gonna skip that page. Jaws reminds me of my wife. She avoided being bitten by a shark. She opened her mouth first. But
What?
She bit the shark.
she bit the shark. My wife wanted a foreign convertible, so I bought her a rickshaw. They're so fucking good. Payday at my house is like the Academy Awards. My wife says, "May I have the envelope, please?" Okay, so that's a buying dinner joke. Let's skip a little further.
Oh, so these are just dad jokes.
There's I flew out to California, got the flu, and flew back. Okay, one last one. I know a girl who just got an obscene phone call for her girlfriend. Collect.
What?
I don't get that one.
I don't either.
Oh, I ended on a doozy.
No, well, I know a better one. My doctor put his hand in my wallet and said, cough. That's good, right? Insurance is still high. That joke still tracks. Anyway, Henny Youngman, a classic.
So, right around now is when Tony walks back in the house with Samantha. And we already said Samantha played by Alyssa Milano. What I thought was interesting was 1,500 girls auditioned for the role of Samantha Micelli.
But you can't find an actress anywhere.
Yeah, maybe they couldn't find an age-appropriate sister because they spent way too much time casting this role.
1,500! That is so many people.
Wild. Absolutely wild.
How many people were in line for Tony Danza's job, or was he thought of at the beginning?
I don't know, but I bet this was a sitcom with him in mind at the creation.
The one rule was they needed someone named Tony.
We need an actor who'll only go by Tony. What's interesting, too, is I don't know if you guys saw this, but originally the show was called You're the Boss. And I'm so glad they changed that, because I can only imagine that was going to be just, like, a phrase they tried to, like, hammer into the cultural lexicon, like a
Hey,
Fonzie.
you're the boss.
Hey, you're the boss. Okay. Hey, your towel fell down, Mona. You're the boss.
Hey, oh, hey, you're the boss. So when they walk in, I thought it was interesting, too. He tells Angela, like, don't mind the shiner. She got it sliding into third base playing baseball. So is he covering for the fight, or is it just a continuity issue?
I think he's covering for the fight.
Yeah, he's trying to make a good first impression. Not my kid just fought 3 boys.
Like, she won't beat up your nerdy snake-loving son.
And you see her, like, turn on the charm when she's talking to Angela, and it's like, oh my God, you have a lovely home, and you're so pretty. And Angela's like, oh, thank you, I'm flattered. She's like, that's the idea. And she, like, looks over at her dad and, like, makes, like, a face. I said that pretty good child acting from her.
That was actually really funny. That got a laugh out of me.
I mean, she was really good throughout this entire show. I mean, a year from this, it's funny because I mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger movies later, but a year later, she stars in Commando with Arnold, one of the greatest movies of all time.
That's not the one with Hulk Hogan?
That's Suburban
You're
Commando.
thinking Suburban Commando with Christopher Lloyd.
This is the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger picks up a copy of Hit Parader with Boy George on the cover and goes, why don't they just call her Girl George? Which I still think is like the funniest Arnold line of all time.
And then Jonathan walks back downstairs, and the two kids meet each other, and it's kind of awkward, but they're like, look, they love each other already. And they're trying to kind of, can we seal the deal here? Mona says that thing about, who does she reference here? Joe, I was just hoping you would know.
Albert Schweitzer.
Yeah, he is who?
He was like a musician, philosopher. He's like one of those people who just like is thought of as, what do they call it now? Like almost like a Renaissance man or something, like just somebody who was very good at a lot of different things. So I think the joke here is to be like, people aren't just one thing.
I think at that point I was like, this is too many references I don't get too early in the show.
We kind of glossed over the fact that Mona guilt Angela into hiring him because she tells him about how the wife died and how his career ended because he hurt his leg playing.
Oh, that is
baseball.
true. Yeah. So, there was a lot more of that conversation that I kind of glanced over.
One real quick thing too, though, that I think is a really good throwaway thing here is when Sam finishes her conversation and like Mona realizes she's going too far. Mona like fucking shoves Samantha so
she sends her
hard.
flying.
Yeah, she goes flying. Like, I think she clearly fucked up and pushed too hard and they kept it in, and I fucking lost it. I was like, oh my God, that is like child abuse.
So yeah, to go back into what Ferg was saying too, yeah, we find out the whole backstory for Tony is he was a pro baseball player and he got injured, and now he's just been doing odd jobs. In that time span, he lost his wife. They were together young, and we don't know how she died. I assume she got sick or something, but they don't really delve into that. But really playing up this idea of like, come on, like he's a good dude. He's had a tough go at life. Like he could really use the situation.
Do you think that maybe she was a baseball catcher and he just ran so hard into her at home plate that he killed her, and now he carries that guilt around and he had to get out of the major leagues?
That's why in the intro he doesn't go really hard and he gets out.
Yeah. He learned.
And then one day he becomes an angel and then just helps the rest of his team from afar.
Is it lung cancer too? I think.
Yeah,
'cause he
he's like
smokes.
Angel's in the outfield. He's a smoker.
Yeah, he's like,
And that
I'll
was
see you
the
in
whole
5
thing.
years. Like, thanks, Christopher Lloyd, for destroying
I
our
always
childhood.
thought that was like a weird to get into that when Angel's in the
Yeah.
outfield. It's just like you just see Tony. He's like because he's a good dude in the movie, but he happens to be
waves.
a smoker. It's just like, oh, he's gonna be with us next season. You go, whoa, what?
He's smoking on a cloud. Like, oh my God, Christopher Lloyd. This is
Especially
for
watching it as a
7-year-olds.
kid, you're like, damn, that's just like as a kid, you're like, this is a little dark.
Dark, full-bodied Richmond tobacco. That's what it is.
To get back into the episode, this is when like they all kind of get on Angela, like, hey, like, can we do this? And like even Jonathan signing off and saying like, I vote yes, and we finally get the okay from her, and everyone's excited. Samantha asks if she's gonna get her own room, and Mona's like, yeah, you can have the sewing room. Like, imagine having a whole sewing room.
Yeah, that tracked for me too. I was like, wow, they have their own sewing room. Is that where Angela maybe made that insane fucking outfit she's wearing later in this episode?
To be fair, that house is massive.
A big house, but no, it didn't have no alcove.
Oh.
That house was screaming for a sitcom alcove.
They didn't really get popular until a little after.
Yeah, Joey Gladstone made that popular.
Iconic sitcom character.
Yeah. This iconic sitcom character of a failing comedian who doesn't understand why he's failing until he bombs on Star Search and changes his career to be a drive time morning DJ.
So cut it out.
Was that joke made of wood?
Somebody sell wood?
That's like Jay's favorite impression to do, I think. Because he never hesitates on it. It's
love
always
doing
like that, yeah.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't look up Mr. Woodchuck puppets occasionally.
We've established this. I do a lot of voices.
Yeah, except Bobcat Goldthwait.
Can you just try Bobcat?
Yeah, come on.
Just do the I'm a talking bunny. Just say the I'm a talking bunny.
No, thank you.
And he thought about it.
Do
Do
Mr.
it.
Woodchuck, but raspier. And you got Bobcat.
Oh, that's actually a good point. Yeah, like rasp up the woodchuck.
He has certain inflections in his voice and the way he does things.
I'm talking bunny.
I just want you to know that like neither of those sound like Bobcat. Though.
Right, but at least we're trying, Jay.
Tony goes to the car to get some of his stuff. Mona follows him because she wants to just watch him lift things.
He's a handsome man.
She's just so horny.
Yeah. And you have the two kids having a little interaction where Jonathan's asking Samantha, are you afraid of snakes? He's like, afraid? I used to have a boa constrictor when I was a kid. He'd swallow live mice and once ate a kid bigger than you. Then Jonathan's like is it too late to change my vote? Very sitcom to, put the punch on that scene.
Is it Shel Silverstein who has the being eaten by a boa constrictor? Must be, right?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there we cut to, I don't know if it's, I didn't like how it transitioned because I don't know if it's later that night or a completely different night. I feel like it's a time jump.
One quick thing, too, I want to throw in before we get into this that makes it, I think, so confusing for the time is because that scene is 7 minutes long. That is a very long scene for a sitcom that's 25 minutes long. Like, they put more than a quarter of that episode right up front.
They have to explain the ethos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through sitcoms where the whole episode, doesn't really break out of the house or anything like that. So,
And this one doesn't either.
but yeah, I didn't like how next thing you know, you just see Angela coming back home from a date that was never brought up. And I don't know if it's the same day or a week later or a month later. Like
That is hard. You don't know if they're like, we'll give you a 1 week trial period or this is 12 hours later. You have no idea.
I feel like they cut the episode down and there's stuff we're missing because there's not even a reference to the date up until you see her on the date.
But do you think this is her rebelling against her mother for dating young men, that she's dating this old fucking guy?
No, I don't think he's that old either. He looks older than he is, I think, because of his hair. He has like the gray.
Well, he looks old and should dye it.
He's Laurie's dad in Halloween 2.
Oh, yeah.
But you see the two of them go to like her front steps and she's thanking him for a lovely evening. He's like, oh, you mean you're going to send me home starving? And like, oh no, not at all. And like they head in. I was like, is that how you get in the door? You just, hey, I'm hungry.
This was a fuck up of writing to me because they go into why he's hungry after.
Yeah.
But when he first says it, you're like, they just came back from dinner and he's like, you're going to send me home hungry? Like,
Yeah.
that just sounds like a sex joke at that
Yeah.
point.
Big time.
I thought he was hungry for that pussy.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Okay.
You could have just said, can I come in for a nightcap? Oh,
Yeah. So well, they go inside and you find out that after a $300 dinner, they're still hungry.
Which, by the way, $300 dinner now is about $955 two-person dinner.
Oof. I think I'm just sadder knowing that the inflation's that crazy.
They mentioned it's that nouveau cuisine. That's basically like the dumb fucking food from American Psycho, where it's like very small portions all stacked up with like drizzles to look fancy. So they spent $900 on food that didn't fill them, that looked silly.
Well, he's a president of something.
Do you think of just fine dining as the food from American Psycho?
No, that's what nouveau cuisine is. They mentioned nouveau cuisine, and that's what that is. That's a specific thing. I think of fine dining as the fucking Hilltop Steakhouse. My brain will not go past that ever.
R.I.P. To those of you who are the majority of our listeners who are not from our area, it was a great steakhouse. Not in the way that you guys think of a great steakhouse. It was just a good family steak place to go to when we were kids.
That was filled with smoke and pictures of 1940s cowboys. My God, it was heaven.
And it had a cactus outside.
It wasn't the kind of place where you go to get like a 45-day dry-aged steak.
No.
Yeah, it is missed.
It was also a supermarket when we were young.
Yeah.
The greatest salad dressing of all time.
Isn't that still sold?
No, the dressing, I think it's gone.
Oh, I thought maybe they spun that off, but
I wish somebody would.
The two head into the kitchen. This is when we find out their roles at the job, because he refers to her as like Miss Vice President and talking about how like great she was with the clients tonight. And she goes like, "Oh, if you say so, Mr. President." So now we know, okay, they work together, and this wasn't a date per se. It was a business thing because there were clients there. So I was like, oh, okay. So I read that wrong. And then 10 seconds later, they're like kissing. So it was weird. It was like it flipped me, and then it had to flip me right back like a moment later.
And he's like, "Make me a PB&J," and then like jumps her.
Well, she gets him potato salad, which looks like Chinese food.
Yes, that threw me off too. She says green salad and then pulls out a Chinese food container. And then she's like, "It's potato salad." You're like, none of these things are accurate.
That was like the props department, like, oh shit. Yeah, just use this.
That was like somebody's lunch that day. They were like, "Just put this in the fucking fridge."
But yeah, once they started to kiss, I was a little like, what is the dynamic between these two? And I couldn't tell if that was a first kiss or if they were an established relationship.
This was sloppy. This was not. It was weird. Oh, I agree. It was a weird path to take.
I don't think it's a first kiss just because the next step is let's go away for the weekend and not like,
yeah,
hey, let's go on a second date.
Well, here's the thing though. I think because he has power and money and a second location, he can do that. Whereas most people don't have that, right? Where like most people aren't like, "I like you, let's go away on vacation for the weekend," because that's like not an affordable thing to do or a place to go, right? I think he's trying to like maybe assert his power and his status, you know?
Yeah, I suppose.
When he grabs her for that kiss, also she drops a plate and refers to herself as the Connecticut Klutz.
I was like, that's either a wrestler or a serial killer, and either way, I would watch that movie.
So that's the first time we find out that they're in Connecticut. So I don't know if that was just kind of thrown in there.
They say it earlier.
You see it in
Do
the
they?
intro. You see entering Connecticut on the sign.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
But for story purposes, though,
Yeah.
of the episode, where the intro isn't necessarily made at the time, this would be the first time we find out where they now live. But yeah, I didn't catch that in the intro, to be honest with you. If I'm being completely honest, when the intro was going on, we talked about it. I was kind of bored with it because it was just shots of the car. So I think I looked away at one point.
And you find out, because she mentions she like needs to get driven to the train. So I think the assumption is that she's like a classic New York commuter. Take like the train into the city every day and lives in Connecticut. Because I think basically, especially then, if you wanted to like work in the city, you either had to live in like upstate New York or Connecticut and take a long train ride every day to like have a house and a yard and that sort of stuff.
When they're on the ground cleaning up this plate, they start kissing again. And that's when he's like, "I have a wonderful idea." And she's like, "We can't, my son's upstairs." And that's when he proposes the vacation. I don't mean upstairs, I mean upstate. I've got a place.
I feel like this was very dangerous to everyone involved's knees.
The broken glass on the ground.
Yeah, like very
Yeah.
sharp china shards on the ground.
They're just kinky like that.
Mona, I would say yes. I don't know about Angela.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, my friend.
The plate does not fall far from the shelf. I think you're correct, yeah.
And then like they start making out and they're like just on the ground. There's a lot of potential danger going on with all this broken glass as they start making out on the floor. But then Tony just like runs in shirtless with a bat and like grabs Grant off of her.
The second the plate fell, I knew where this was going.
Yeah, it was a little predictable.
I didn't know if I predicted Tony running in with a bat.
Not shirtless, but I thought he was going to come in thinking it was a burglar and attack him. Something he was going to get in the way of the date one way or another because the plate broke.
This again though is I get he's trying to like protect her as the, now that he works there, but this was starting to feel like an overstep as the conversation went in again.
Just keep in mind, he's from New York and there's a lot of crime where he's coming from, so he's on edge.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, it's not just Angela. His daughter is in the house.
There's also like that whole, like, he walks in and when Angela's explaining, oh, this is my housekeeper to Grant, Grant's like, well, that's the ugliest woman I've ever seen. And it's like, what's that dig for?
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean, Grant is a huge piece of shit, right? Like, you're supposed to hate this dude immediately.
Well, without spoiling too much that happens after, he's not, like, usually Grant would be married, right? Like in any other show, he'd be married.
I was expecting it when she was talking to him later, and it didn't happen.
But he is single. I don't want to spoil too much, but as far as like decisions that are made later, it doesn't sound like her participation necessarily dictated his decision making. So
I don't know about that.
But it wasn't just his decision either.
True.
He can make a recommendation, but he wasn't the final decision maker.
Also, sex wasn't off the table at that point either.
Also true. Because she was like, I will totally go up to your cabin in 2 weeks' time. Like, I'm still down to clown.
She's never said no.
Truth.
He also refers to Tony as the male Mary Poppins at this point.
His response to this was my favorite. You're lucky that I like that movie.
Yeah.
I'm Marty Poppins.
Tony
Also,
Poppins.
I don't know why it took until this far to get into the episode, but does anybody else get like, I never put it together until now, a John Bernthal vibe from a young Tony Danza?
Not really.
I have
No?
no
I can
idea
see
who
it.
that is.
I didn't think you would, but
The Punisher.
Okay, still don't.
he was
Oh,
in The
then
Walking,
no.
Dead. He was in
No.
he's in a bunch of shit you've never seen. You don't know who he is.
He was great in We Own This City.
Oh, and he was in
Yes.
Top Gun?
But Gordy, you've seen Top Gun. Surely you know who we're speaking of.
I've seen Top Gun, and don't call me Shirley.
Gordy got the wrong airplane movie.
To follow up the joke about Mary Poppins, then he says like to Angela, like after she tells him to behave himself, he's like, don't tell me to behave myself. Talk to Conan the Barbarian here. And he goes, no, that movie I hated.
Who hates Conan?
Yeah, who hates Conan?
Who hates Conan and loves Mary Poppins? That's
Right.
strange.
You should love both.
I love both.
But do you think he loves Conan the Librarian?
You forgot about the Dewey Decimal System.
I guess that is a few years away.
No one's going to get that joke.
Oh, there's got to be some UHF fans out there.
Angela telling Tony to go to his room, I thought was really funny too. Like just the way that he handles it because he reacts like he's a kid.
Yeah, he sulks like a little kid.
And I like how Grant does too.
Well, yeah, Tony go to your room, Grant go to your cab. So Grant's not getting any now.
Also, Grant was leaving this cab running. First of all, he bought a $900 dinner, so he's got money, right? But he's willing to be like, I will go in here and we'll hang out for a few hours. What a weird life a cab driver was in the 80s, too. We were like, this guy's just going to be in there with this girl for a few hours and I'm just hanging out.
Meter's on.
Yeah, meter's on, right? You're making money.
Does the meter still run when you're not moving? Doesn't
Yep.
it go by
Yeah.
miles?
No, if that's still technically part of the trip. If you tell somebody to leave the meter running because you want them to stay there to take you back when they're done, that's the job, yeah.
It'd be funny if the cab was Alex Rieger.
Yeah. That would have been a nice little cross promotion.
Yeah. What year was Taxi? Sorry, what year was Taxi again?
It ended like right before the show started.
Yeah, it was like 77 to 82 maybe.
Oh, okay, all right.
That's a missed opportunity.
Well, a couple people from the show did end up on Who's the Boss for like spots, like for guest spots, but not as their characters, I don't believe. But now Angela and Tony are talking and she's like, I knew this wasn't going to work out. She's pissed and she doesn't like how he like got involved like that. And again, I understand that it's weird. He came in with good intentions. He thought maybe there was a burglar. And true Grant started talking shit first. But sometimes you got to swallow your pride, right? This is not like, you don't have free reign. You're technically at your boss's house where you're staying. Like, you have to be a little more mindful.
I will say too, in this scene, I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but she's wearing a sequined dress. And like, I don't know if it was by accident or not, but the way the giant like TV lights are, it is distracting. It's almost blinding because you just keep getting flashes of color off of her dress. I like lost a minute totally in the scene.
Nope.
I didn't notice.
If you go back and just watch the scene again, her dress is like a disco ball.
Okay, I'll tell you that I'm gonna, but I'm not.
All right, I'm gonna have to find I'll make it to a bite-sized video and send it to you in the WhatsApp.
You don't know how to do that.
I'm gonna learn just so you can have to watch it.
Were you guys a little confused with how the scene ended when they're kind of done talking and she's like, I think we should continue our discussion tomorrow morning. And she's like, I'm so angry I could strangle you. Let's go to bed. And then he goes, right. And then they walk up at the same time. And I'm like, wait, whoa, what? Hold on.
Hey,
yo,
wait.
Hey, oh, hey. But yeah, the let's go to bed just felt like a weird way to say that.
That's the will they, won't they.
It should have been, you stay here and clean this, housekeeper, and I'm gonna go to bed.
Yeah, you pick up this plate and we'll talk about this in the morning.
They just left the glass on the floor. What if the kid comes down in the morning and falls in it?
What if the snake starts to crawl around it?
It's not loose.
They like to get loose.
Gordo likes to get loose.
So in the next scene, we see Tony now with a tank top on, goes to knock on Angela's door. Also, I felt like nothing that happens in this scene makes any sense. Like this whole conversation that they have, it's just a really weird dynamic. Because, well, I did like at first when she opens the door, she thinks it's Jonathan. She's like, did you have a bad dream, sweetie? It's like, no, I didn't even get to sleep.
She like has to cover herself up when she realizes it's Tony, right? Because she's just like tired. It's her kid. She's not thinking about it. This is also the scene where Angela does a Tony impression and then completely jumps out of the Tony impression too, where like she's not making fun of him, like she just can't help herself but do it. It's like a very weird decision they make.
Well, she's telling him like, you might have cost me this huge promotion. And he's like, oh, so you just went out with that guy for the promotion? And it's like all the way that like it's going back and forth. Like she's like, no, I think he's handsome. And it's like, yeah, but like now if you like hook up with them, like you're not going to know if you got this promotion because you earned it or because
it's a compelling argument.
Sure, but like, where's this his place to be having this conversation?
Does not know
with
this
her?
woman though.
Not day one of your job, which I assume this is what it is.
This was really bad writing because you Italians are really good at holding your tongue, you know?
I just
He's
thought
talking
that
with his hands. He's eating cannolis.
I just thought that the setup for this whole scene, like, it just didn't make sense. Tony's a good guy. I understand like the thought process of like where he's coming from, but it doesn't make sense for him to just step in and have this conversation with her, hardly knowing her.
No, agreed. Because we don't know the time lapse, I assume it's like that night or the next night.
No, it's that night.
That's even weirder. Like, that's like insta-fired, get out of my house.
So the night you meet your new boss who didn't even want to hire you, you're like, hey, you really shouldn't fuck that guy. Like, that's really...
Yeah, when you put it like that, yes, it is strange. But, this is the sitcom world, man. You got to have that suspended disbelief.
It just seemed like a wild overstep here. Like, it just, I thought the story didn't make sense to me, like, under the context of what we're watching right now. So it took me out of it a little bit.
To go with both of you, though, too, and Nick, to your point and to Jay's point, right? So it's, like, wildly inappropriate. It doesn't make any sense, but also it's a sitcom. So then right after that, we just get, like, a huge exposition dump for no reason where she was like, oh, well, you see what happened when my husband left me, and I've been working hard at this job. It's like, okay, just give the whole backstory real quick. Like, this doesn't fit here at all. It's just very jagged.
You know what the correct move is? And sorry, I'm going to be a better writer than the show again, but for her to fire him that night and be like, look, this isn't working out, blah, blah, blah. And then in the morning when she sees that he got the son eating eggs, she goes, oh, we'll give it another try.
See, I feel like that would have been too much of a cop-out. I feel like that's too generic.
Sitcoms are always generic.
Prefer the way they did it.
I prefer a firing like that in a show like this to be like a big moment in the series.
Although at the time it might not have been as unoriginal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like maybe nowadays that move would be unoriginal, but back then maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this storyline isn't good for the pilot. Maybe if they did this like later down the road, and then like you could add some scenes, because now instead of like having to worry about introducing us to everybody, you see her hard at work and worried about this promotion and like really like get into it and who's she up against and what's that person doing for leverage. And I don't know. I just feel like this was kind of tossed in and it didn't quite fit into what they're trying to tell in this story. I mean, it shows that Tony's a good dude, but I just think as far as where this really fit in, it didn't really make a lot of sense for me.
It's weird too because this is a 25-minute sitcom, right? We're getting a few more minutes than usual too, right? Usually we're like, oh, they must have cut this, but this feels like they cut something, but they had enough time where they could have like removed one fucking snake joke and like,
Right.
Had something more important.
He does a little bit of Sinatra because
Because it wouldn't be an Italian sitcom if you didn't fucking quote My Way, right?
you get that line. This is where they're really kind of giving you that wink with the potential of the will they won't they. That's when he goes, let me tell you one thing, like you never catch me doing something dumb like sleeping with my employer. And then like he's looking at her, but like it was like a weird exchange. Like they had some good nonverbals. Like he's basically saying like, not that I wouldn't sleep with you, you're attractive. I just the circumstance, like the way both of them had some really good nonverbal looks at one another.
We don't like the flashbacks in shows, but I would love a cutback here where it's Tony and like the old guy who owns the baseball team and he's in bed crying, like the crying game. He's like, I did this once before, I can't do it again.
Then another flashback to him with the garbage truck. Oh,
You already did that joke.
Wait, was the garbage truck his boss? That he's having sex with the garbage truck? Is that what you're referring? Oh, I can't be fucking this truck and getting more raises. Is that what you do?
I meant the garbage truck owner, but
What's your job? I'm garbage truck owner. Like, oh, that's a good job.
Jay, please move on from this now.
I dropped my glasses.
This is bad.
So now the next morning, we see Tony in the kitchen. He's making breakfast. And the two kids are in there with him. And he's like, all right, egg fans, let's show those chickens that they didn't get laid in vain.
I like that, yeah.
Samantha wants her scrambled eggs. And then he's asking Jonathan, like, hey, how do you want your eggs? And he goes, in the shell. I hate eggs. And he wants to have some crunchy crawlers and a cup of coffee. Am I to assume crunchy crawlers are cereal?
yes.
Yeah, you see the box. Not a real cereal, though. However, there is a candy called Crunchy Crawlers you can buy currently.
And there was a toy set called Creepy Crawlers.
Oh, yeah, you made the little spiders and stuff.
I had
little,
creepy crawlers.
Me
It was like the
too.
Easy Bake Oven thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they stunk. to make those, it stinks up your whole house.
They did. They
They
smelled
got
terrible.
banned because they were so dangerous.
Well, the plates, like they changed them eventually, but when I had a set, it was there was straight up metal plates that you threw in there and heated. Like you could burn yourself really
Yeah,
easy.
it was a hot light bulb that heated up metal plates, and then you take them out, and kids are supposed to know to put them down and let them cool off. But
Like, look, kid's gonna put it on the shelf, like a windowsill, like a pie in 1941. Like, nobody knows that. They're gonna burn their fucking fingertips off.
Creepy crawlers. Not to get into too much of a tangent, so let's do it as quickly as possible. But how do you guys like your eggs? I'm an over easy guy.
scrambled.
For you being scrambled, obviously, like we've established, that's the most childlike way to eat them.
I eat a lot of different types of eggs. Scrambled is just my favorite, but I eat a lot of over easy and just regular fried eggs. But scrambled number one.
I can do eggs pretty much any way, just whatever mood I'm in. If I'm like rush, scrambled. But I can do them anyway.
But if you had to pick like a favorite style to cook it,
Honestly, favorite style, like are the eggs alone? Or are we talking like breakfast?
Yeah, that's where I'm at, because if it's
It's gonna
breakfast
say
sandwich...
eggs Benedict.
No, because like I like an over easy runny yolk on top of like a hash or something like that. Like that's probably like my favorite go-to.
That's a good one.
But if it's just like ease of access, like a nice fluffy scramble is also really good.
I like an over easy egg just because I like to be able to dip my toast in it too. So even if I'm not having
Yeah.
a full breakfast where the yolk can get into stuff, but just being able to dip my toast in the yolk.
Yeah, sunny side up for me is my favorite, but I'll eat it anyway.
Sunny side up is just not as runny, right? Or not runny at all.
No, that's the
No,
most runny.
that's the
the
most
most
It can
runny,
be
yeah.
super runny, yeah.
I thought
My problem
over
with it
easy
is-
over easy was the runniest.
No, because it's flipped once.
Yeah, you
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
you're
you
right,
do
yeah,
a
yeah.
quick flip. Now you see, do you guys like eggs from your head down to your legs?
What is that from?
That was a commercial. That's when there's commercials for just things that you're like, who's paying for this? Like the whole got milk ad. I'm like, so like milk just bands together for these ads.
Yeah, big milk.
I've never trusted Big Milk.
We got the 5 families of milk, Gorelick, Hood. Like, they're all together.
God, I can't believe you remembered something old.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did good for a change.
You did.
I just want to bring up an eggs thing. I don't know if anybody I enjoy, but both terrified of when you make a breakfast sandwich on a bagel and you have a fried egg, but a really runny yolk that you know when you take that first bite, the yolk is going to explode up the top hole. And you hope it doesn't hit you in the face, but sometimes it does. But it's so good that you have to try.
And that's why your wife banned you from eating your egg sandwiches on the couch.
Yes, I have ruined many a couch with an egg. I forget if we talked about this before, but like the first week we had our daughter home, she like peed through everything and stained the couch. And I was like, I'm so proud that I know this is my child. It was like the Seinfeld Poppy stain where I was like, that's it. There's no question now. And her pee was also cherry slush, which was really strange.
So Tony's getting on Jonathan about this whole crunchy crawler thing. He's like, what do you want to top it off with? A shot of vodka?
A weird breakfast booze.
He's kind of got Samantha trained too in this idea of like, that's all sugar. You know, she's very on board with the healthy breakfast.
Yeah, I didn't like that because what kid doesn't like sugar?
It seemed out of character for a kid to be like, yeah, it's nice to know that but I think it shows that he's a good parent
Yeah.
because he has his daughter like on that whole like nutrition side of things when it comes to breakfast foods. But yeah, it was weird the way that, you know, she's just talking about like the ingredients in it and how it's not healthy for you.
It's just sugar and cornstarch. Like,
And Tony gets on Jonathan and basically, you know, not in a forceful way, but somewhat is like, hey, you're going to eat eggs and you're going to like it.
He bullied him into eating eggs.
I don't think it was a tough bullying, though.
Not bullying, but it was weird. I debated on whether or not this was still because of the time frame he's been there. If he's been there for a couple months, but this still felt a little bit of an overstep.
that's his job, though. That's not
I think
an
the overstep, though, is throwing away the cereal. He could have been like, look, you can't have that. Try eggs today. See if you like it my way. If you don't like the eggs, we can go back to the crispy crawlers tomorrow or whatever. But he, like, throws the cereal into the trash.
It's the equivalent of like a kid saying they don't like it. So, all right, find another restaurant when you're making them food. Like, no, you eat what I tell you to eat.
But Angela is typically okay with him having that for his breakfast.
Because she's always on the run. She hasn't had time to properly parent him because she's constantly working and by herself. That's why she needs a housekeeper in the first place.
Sure, but I'm just saying that if she had walked into the kitchen and he was eating these crunchy crawlers with a coffee, she wouldn't have gone up to Tony and been like, hey, what's going on here? This isn't what I want. Like, I feel like she wouldn't pay any mind to it.
Yeah, I think that... I mean, because when she does come down, she's like, oh, you're eating eggs. She does ask where the cereal is. And he's like, Tony threw it away. And you think she should have a reaction to that, too. Right? Like, is she that absentee of a parent?
So far, it seems that way.
When Tony's like distributing the eggs to the two kids and Jonathan's like, isn't there anything else? He goes, yeah, hunger. Now eat those eggs. I do think like Tony Danza, this whole episode was like the shining spot of every scene.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the point, right?
I mean, there is a reason that we're doing 4 shows this month and I've already done 1, right? Like, Tony Danza gets in 5 sitcoms because Tony Danza is good at being in sitcoms.
Yeah.
Can we just add an extra for the end of the month to do the Tony Danza talk show?
Oh, I used to love that.
Nobody
I
used
miss
to love that.
how many bad afternoon talk shows there were from celebrities. There was like that, Rosie O'Donnell, and then there was like the summer weird ones like Chevy Chase and Keenan Ivory Wayans.
Chevy Chase's was so bad it got less than a season.
Yeah.
Steve Harvey seems to be doing good for himself.
He has fallen into a very good career of doing
He got
all
into
sorts
that
of weird
niche.
stuff.
I think the most successful thing about Steve Harvey is he understands his place. You know what I mean? He's not trying to do more. He's just like, okay, I'm just going to capitalize on this part of the entertainment industry. I'm not going to try to go and do movies and acting. I'm just going to ride this, and it's working.
Yeah, he's not like, I'm doing Othello in the park. Like, no, we don't want that, Steve Harvey. Like, you just make jokes with families.
Yeah. Same thing with Wayne Brady, I feel like.
So Angela walks in, and now Tony's asking her, hey, do you want something for breakfast? And she's like, oh, no, thanks. Just like juice and coffee. He's like, you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. And then you get that from from the kid, like, hey, what about her teeth? Because that was his whole thing with Jonathan. Like, hey, you have to have this breakfast because it's going to rot your teeth out. But, why not say it to her?
Oh, I took that wrong. I thought if you don't eat, I'm going to knock your teeth out.
Yeah, me too.
That would have been the overstep for sure.
Yes,
Angela, eat these fucking eggs.
That's why I thought he bullied him into eating the eggs.
He gets the bat again. I'll smack the shit out of you, kid.
Hey, with all due respect, lady, eggs aren't fucking free.
They're certainly more expensive nowadays.
Yeah.
Oh, way more now.
Bro, what happened to egg prices? Seriously. It's like $7 depending on the day. It fluctuates like the stock. It's like insane.
And if you buy like the cage-free eggs or the all-organic eggs too, you're getting expensive breakfast right now.
No, you can. My chickens can be in a cage. I really don't give a fuck.
You're gonna come back like Buddhism is gonna be right, and you're just gonna come back as a caged fucking.
Well, I'll
chicken.
say this, quick tangent. I don't know if you guys ever saw, as of recording this episode, we found out within like the week that Morgan Spurlock, the creator of Super Size Me, the director, had passed. But
he was putting out a new documentary called Super Dies Me.
You've been waiting all week for that one.
No, that just came to me because I'm that funny.
Cut it
so,
out.
did you guys ever see Super Size Me 2?
No, I heard about. I don't think I ever saw it though.
So it's
No.
available for you can watch. I think it's all on YouTube. So basically, he's like creating his own fast food chicken restaurant, and he's like following all these guidelines and rules, and he's doing cage-free
This sounds like a Nathan
chicken.
for You sketch. This is a real thing he did.
Yeah. So it was so to have cage-free chicken, he had this big chicken coop, and basically, if you have the door cracked open and you just have some like chicken wire out, like in a semicircle that goes out about a foot outside of the giant coop. Because they have the option to walk into direct sunlight, it can be considered cage-free or free-range chicken. Free range.
The big chicken's been lying to us.
It's the sort of stuff that I watch or like think about like the once a year. Like I've been vegetarian in my past, and sometimes I see those things and I'm like, fuck, I feel so guilty eating meat.
But the people who are spending all that extra money being like, oh, these are free-range chicken. It's like, it's not any different. It's all just, they cracked the door open.
I mean, the organic is probably a little more important than that, though, because they're not all fucking jacked up.
Sure,
on
that's a
uncomfortable
little bit.
steroids, yeah.
But I would say watch it. It's interesting. There are some parts that I had to turn my head when it comes to like animal things, but overall a decent watch. But moving right back on, Angela notices that Jonathan's eating his eggs, and he's like, "Yeah, Tony threw out my crunchy crawlers." She's like, "Well, are you liking the eggs?" And he's like, "Well, I haven't thrown up yet." And so she's kind of noticing this whole, like, she's on board with forcing him to do it, when they have the dialogue.
She goes, did you threaten my son? It's working.
She needs that person I think she knows that she needs that person in Jonathan's life, right? That
Yeah, because Mona had said it earlier on, like, he needs a father figure. Like, his therapist said he needs a father figure.
And he's a pretty young kid to be going to therapy. I didn't start going to therapy until I was like 33, and I probably would have benefited from going to it a lot earlier.
It's weird though, because like if you're a therapist and you're telling like the mother like he needs a father figure, it's like, well, there's only so many avenues I can achieve that for him. Like, I'm not just gonna like marry some dude
right
just to accomplish that.
I'm gonna hire a male housekeeper and let him move in.
And she didn't even know that was an option.
I mean, she's not that selfish though, because she did get rid of her sewing room.
Yeah. So there's a whole conversation between Tony and Angela here about the juice and coffee, which becomes like the metaphor talking about the situation with that dude.
I know they're not using coffee; they're using the crunchy crawlers as the analogy.
So when he goes back to Angela, he's saying to her, "Hey, did you think about it?" And she's like, "Yeah, no, still just juice and coffee." And he's like, "No, not that, like the other thing." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm just gonna, see what happens." And this is in reference to the, hey, I don't think you should go away with this dude because you want to make sure you got this promotion on your own merit. And he goes, "Oh, hey, this is the first, oh, hey, oh.
Yeah, we get the first one.
And he goes, if you just let what happens happen, when what you want it to happen happens, you're not going to know whether it happened or not.
It's confusing and makes sense at the same time.
Yeah, somehow it works, but you're like, wait, what the fuck is happening here?
It's like a fucking riddle. But yeah, once you think about it, it makes perfect sense. And all he's saying here is, in code is, hey, if you go out with this dude and you stay with him for a couple weeks and you get the promotion, you're not going to know if you earned the promotion or if it was a reward for going away with him.
I could live with that.
I guess for the long term, since she actually does like the guy, I guess it's not the worst.
Yeah, if this would be different if he was like a lecherous guy that she didn't like.
Yeah, the fact that she actually has interest in him makes it not so bad.
And like, this guy's probably a shithead, but she does like him, so it does change the dynamic a little bit.
I also wonder if she actually likes him or if she convinced herself that she likes him so she doesn't feel like a whore.
I mean, that's interesting, but also maybe a little too in depth for this level of sitcom.
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't think that it goes that deep.
But he does.
Yeah, yo.
the dick suck gag noise got me. I'm sorry.
So this is when the whole crunchy crawlers metaphors start with, sometimes like there are things that are no good for you, like crunchy crawlers and guys who want to, and she cuts them off and says, now wait a minute. If I want crunchy crawlers, then I'll have crunchy crawlers. And he goes, well, crunchy crawlers are empty calories, not really satisfying. And in an hour, you're just going to want something else. And she goes, well, maybe I want more crunchy crawlers.
She kind of calls his bluff on that one.
I mean, valid points are being made.
Yeah, they're both not wrong. If she likes him enough to be like, what if I want seconds of his crunchy crawler, then I guess it's fine.
There was a point where I started to question, again, I've obviously said, I think this is a huge overstep for him to get this involved in the situation.
Yeah.
Is it possible? I don't think so yet. But do you think part of it is he already likes her a little and doesn't want her hooking up with someone else?
No, I don't get that vibe at all.
No, it's way too early for that.
Oh, I kind of do.
No, will they, won't they is different than like, it's been 36 hours and I like you so much.
You're making like active decisions based on that desire. No, I get it. And I just the thought kind of entered my head, but I wasn't sold on it completely, but thought it was worth mentioning because I don't know. I just think it's so weird that he's so openly like, you cannot go away with this guy.
Yeah, I just think it's really weird because she could legitimately like him, and I didn't see anything from Grant that would make me say he would be bad for her or he is a bad person.
Not him being her boss and trying to fuck her. That's not
first of all, yeah, he's directly above her and trying to have sex with her, so that's not great. But he also says he makes a shitty comment to her where he was like, oh, the parking meter's not the only thing you'll let running tonight, right? So he he could have walked away and not said that and been like, oh shit, I wanted to fuck her, but I can't, whatever, later.
You made me leave with a boner.
Not gonna take this cab ride with a boner all alone.
And poor Alex Rieger's like, I don't want to hear about this anymore. Why are you talking to me about this? All the way back to...
Cab driver's like, oh, how was your night? He's like, well, what do you think? He's just pointing at his fucking hard dick. Like,
for some reason, Latka's there. He's like,
thank you very much.
the crossover we deserved.
His hard-on's actually Danny DeVito, comes out of the little cage.
Who's the cab driver?
Just all 5 of the guys that went down to Miami in there.
It's this guy and his boner.
That was the ride Rieger picked back up on the way from Miami. He had everybody in the car.
It's not his dick, it's Jeff Conway's dick, and then John Travolta sucked it.
Oh. And then, sadly, cocaine came out of it.
Yeah. Well, anyways.
that was a tangent.
Sorry.
So the conversation kind of ends. She has to take off. She has to go to work, and Tony walks off, and the 2 kids are left in the room. And Jonathan looks over at Samantha's like, what was that all about? She goes, sex. He goes, yeah, that's what I thought. And I like that it buttoned that way with the idea of they're trying to use these metaphors to go over the kids' heads. and they're both like especially Jonathan also understanding it.
Yeah.
Like it's one thing for Samantha to get it. You think she's a little bit more savvy, and I'm under the understanding she's probably a little older.
Yeah,
Just
Jonathan
because of the
seems
size
pretty
difference.
young.
But for Jonathan
he's the
to also
reptile
be
king.
like, yeah, for Jonathan to also be like, oh yeah, they're talking about sex. That was I thought it was good there.
He's seen a colubridator too. That's a snake joke.
Oh,
A what?
So you've been Googling snakes for the past half an
No,
hour?
I'll really quickly. During
Colubrid?
COVID, colubrid, they are a family of snakes. During COVID, YouTube was feeding me this one reptile keeper's YouTube channel, and I learned so much about different reptiles through this guy's extensive collection.
I really want to ask you what else, because I don't think you're going to come up with one single thing.
What do you mean?
Like, give me another thing you learned.
About what? Snakes? About
Reptiles,
monitor lizards?
this guy's
About
channel.
tegus? Guy's got a black and white tegu. Apparently, they're like the puppy of the reptile world.
I've heard that.
Does his black and white Tegu get him a Father's Day gift every year?
His name was Steve Irwin, I believe. Or he had one named Steve and one named Irwin. Either way, learned a lot
I thought
about
you were
it.
talking like the guy that you were watching on YouTube was Steve Irwin. Yeah, I found some YouTuber's account.
20-year-old clips of Steve Irwin. Like, I think this guy's going places. I think he's got a long career ahead of him.
I mean, I could name the guy, but nobody would know him. I would, but he was good.
I like that during COVID, most of us were watching Tiger King, which is a very different, specific thing about animals. And then we walked away, and you watched it too. And then you were like, I need more weird fucking animals in my life.
If we can just go back a minute, Gordo said he would name them, but no one would know him. He's like, I would. Yeah, of course you would. You're the one who said the name.
I would know the name that I said, yes.
Do you want me to say the name? I mean,
Yeah, now I do.
Wiccan's Wicked Reptiles.
That's not his name.
That's his YouTube channel.
What's his name?
Fucking, I don't know.
All right.
You're giving me a headache in my fucking eye right now, Gordo.
So now in the next scene, we see Angela at work with Grant. She's asking Grant flat out, like, hey, does my promotion have anything to do with, our weekend together? He goes, hey, Jim Peterson's up for the job too. I didn't invite him. She's like, well, like.
He gives a mean blowjob.
So that's a low-key yes, then.
No,
Yeah, it
he's
is, yeah.
saying Jim's in contention for the job, and I'm not.
And he didn't get the invite.
No, but he's saying that he's still in contention for the job, and it's the fact that he's not trying to go out with him isn't changing the fact that he's being considered for it.
I can see both sides of this argument, actually.
Agreed. Yeah, it's not. It's
But yeah,
murky.
no, Angela's basically mirroring everything that Tony said to her earlier now, because it's like it got to her head. So now she's saying like, hey, like I just don't want to go away with you this weekend, and then if I get the presidency, I'm never gonna know if it's because I was good or because I was good. And I always figure we talk about this all the time now, but like sitcoms, especially of that era, you don't realize how many sexual things are being said in these shows. Like you
Yeah.
just don't think about it.
I don't know. I picked up pretty young how horny Mona was.
Yeah, but she was like overtly horny. Not in this episode.
True.
Well, she was because she was like chasing after Tony.
Yeah, she's like, I'm gonna go watch him unload the truck.
And then unloading me.
Hey, oh, hey.
Oh, wait.
While she's giving Grant the speech, now she's starting to quote My Way as well, and ends it with like, I don't even believe I just said that.
We talked about it a little bit, right? But like, it's a very generational thing that like Frank Sinatra just becomes part of like this Italian heritage thing. Do you think that will go away? Like, I've noticed a lot of things going away from our generation, right? Like, do you ask like a little kid, like, do they know? Are they gonna have a dog named Blue Eyes, anymore? Like, is that shit gonna be all gone?
No, it's going to be named like Skibbity or something.
1 hour and 35 minutes. I'm just tagging what part of the podcast room before you finally threw the word skibbity in.
I think Gordo plays Gordo Bingo with himself.
I like to think that his wife is playing with him because she's off camera and they're playing like a game against us the whole time.
It would be the ultimate act of savagery.
Play Battleship like any other self-respecting couple.
No.
I just play with the Grim Reaper.
So after she has this conversation with her boss, we cut back to the house and you see Tony vacuuming. And like he does the thing where he's like picking up the couch with the one arm so he can get the vacuum under it.
That was definitely also in the credits, right?
Eventually, yeah. The audience fucking loved it. They went wild when he lifted the couch.
But also, a couch like that isn't that heavy. You know what I mean? Like, you think it's going to be heavy, but then when you lift up from the back like that, it doesn't weigh very much.
In the 80s, they were, because everything was made with different material.
With real stuff. There was no dowels in that couch.
So Angela walks in while he's vacuuming. She's telling him how like Grant just decided to call a special meeting of the board to decide on the new president right away. And she's, obviously very nervous about it. He's trying to tell her like, oh, you're definitely going to get it. And she's like, well, you can never be too sure. And then tells him like, hey, I don't want you to let this go to your head, but I followed your advice. I'm not going to go away with them this weekend. And he's like, hey, that's terrific. He's like really pumped she's not going on vacation because of the circumstances that he's assuming. But to celebrate, he's telling her like, hey, we should go shoot some hoops. This comes up like multiple times throughout the episode too. The idea of like all celebrations must be settled on the basketball court, apparently.
From this point on.
Yeah, they just keep pushing basketball, or hoops, as it's called.
Angela heads upstairs. She wants to throw on her sweats. And immediately after she goes upstairs is when the kids come inside. And, he's happy to see the two kids. He's talking to them, asking them what they did. She played baseball. He played with like an alligator.
He ate lunch with an alligator.
Connecticut schools are wild.
To go back to earlier, we talked about how her like jumping on board, Samantha that is, with the healthy eating. She's like, I'm starved. Like, I need a shot of granola. Like,
that seemed a little forced. When you see things from the 80s, like a big one, you'll see quiche a lot. We've seen it in a bunch of episodes we've done.
Oh, always quiche.
Like
always
quiche always comes up in the 80s. Granola always comes up in the 80s. I like both of those foods. It just seems like weird that they got pigeonholed so much at this time.
Before then, it was fondue.
Yeah, but with her, it's weird because it doesn't aid to like her character type that much, but the over announcing of the healthy food eating seemed weird.
It kind of makes sense because she's an athlete.
I guess.
If I'm stretching things.
But granola has never been like a traditional athletic food, right? Like, chew this thing that'll make you cough when the little dusty parts get on your throat.
It's a healthy snack.
It's delicious. I'm just saying it's not what I would. It's also very dry. I wouldn't be like, I'm going to go run a lap. Let me just throw some granola in my mouth first.
So they're talking and he's asking her like, hey, how was school? And she's like, oh, it was great. Like the playground's beautiful and it's so nice to sit on a bench without having to kick a wino off of it.
That means that she was actively pushing winos off of benches in New York.
Yeah.
That's who she got in the fight with.
It was 3 winos, Dad. Hey, whoa, hey.
And he's saying like, oh, I'm so glad you like it. Are you getting along with Jonathan? It's like, oh, Captain Cobra? Like, yeah, like, I guess. But I really like his mom, and like talking about how like she's got it together and stuff. And, working there, like, with the job she has, like Angela's able to afford this house on her own and like does all this stuff. And, we can see how like for Tony, that's great to have that like Angela as a role model, something that like her, for his daughter to look up to.
Yeah, this is the first time you get that not only does Jonathan need a good male figure in his life, but Sam needs a good female figure in his life. And like you get the evening out.
Yeah.
So when he's telling her like, and then you could be whatever you want to be when you grow up. And she instantly says that she wants to be the manager of the Mets.
In the 80s, not a bad thing to say. Most time after the 80s, not probably the best job.
Yeah, you don't want that now.
And then the phone rings, Tony picks it up and he's doing a pretty good one-way phone call thing. You're getting all the missing pieces just by listening to him. But he's talking to Rosie from the office and he said, oh, nice to meet you. And she asked for Angela. He's like, oh, she's changing her clothes right now. Can I take a message? And Rosie's hesitant to tell Tony anything. He's like, oh, come on. Like, I'm not going to tell anybody. Eventually she spills that. And she doesn't want to say it outright, but she gives Tony enough of a heads up to let him know that Angela got the job.
Yeah, the hint is Yahoo.
I think she should have not got the job to show that this guy's a scumbag.
Yeah, who's the boss now, Tony?
Sets
You're
a different
fired.
tone for the show for sure. And as soon as he hangs up, Angela runs out and she's like, hey, like, who's on the phone? Like, and he goes, oh, it was the Arthur Murray dance studio. You wanted a free dance lesson. Like, oh, great. Like, all my problems are solved. I can be a rockette.
another thing where I'm like, are the Rockettes still a thing people know about? Are they even still a thing?
I feel like we've talked about them recently.
Have we?
Yeah, I
They
feel
still
like
perform like every New Year's, don't they?
Yeah, they're still around. They do a show like once a year in New York.
Not the worst gig in the world. How many days a year do you work? 1.
I don't know. I can't dance, so it would be a bad job for me.
Oh yeah, we couldn't be Rockettes, no.
So they continue to talk. Like they're doing like they're having a coffee and they're talking. And he says to Angela, hey, like, let's say you don't get this job. Are you going to be sorry that you didn't fool around with the boss? And she's like, no, I'm glad I did what I did. And then upon revealing that is when Tony spills the beans like, well, that's good. But by the way, that was Rosie on the phone and you got it. And they're, start celebrating and jumping up and down. And they give each other a big hug until the kids run in. And then they immediately like drop the hug and take like a step back from one another.
That's also from the intro.
This is also a really hard, because it pauses here, right? They do a freeze frame and they cut and then it cuts back, where this should have either been the end of the episode.
agreed.
Or he should have held on to her while the crowd cheered and they should have faded out to commercial. This was a very jarring freeze frame cut.
Especially like in a show that went a couple minutes extra, so like it wouldn't have been the worst to just stop it here.
This one felt long, and it's not because I didn't enjoy it. But this one, I was mindful of the time, and I enjoyed it the whole time, to be honest with you. But it was weird how some shows just fly by and some don't.
This one was just like, it was really robust, right? Like it had just like a lot of content that you had to pay attention to.
It's funny because you kind of get the differences sometimes, right? Like this is robust, like you said, Nick, right? There's a lot of stuff to talk about. And then we'll do other shows where you're conscious of the time because there's just nothing but dialogue. They're so joke heavy that you're like, the plot is nothing. This should be super easy to cover, but they just cram so much into the verbiage.
Once the kids run in, they start talking about like, hey, we need to celebrate. And back to the like, how about we shoot some hoops?
Does anybody know what Jonathan says here? Because I rewound it like 10 times and I couldn't figure out what his celebration was.
I didn't recall it.
Not at the top of my head.
Because he's like...
He says he's going to go feed Wilbur.
Oh, that's what he says.
Yeah.
Okay. I literally rewound back and forth 3 times because like hot bath, glass of champagne, shoot hoops, and then he talks and I basically just heard like... Rah, 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 rah. Like I fucking can't get through this.
Yeah, so that's basically how that ends is they're all going to celebrate, but show how everyone likes different stuff instead of all going out to dinner doing something normal. She's going to have a bath and have a glass of champagne. Jonathan's going to feed his snake, and Tony and his daughter are just going to play basketball in the yard.
I feel like this should have been, especially in the 80s and with kids, it should have been like, we're all going out for pizza.
Something. It just felt weird. That
Especially in
they're all
Connecticut,
splitting
they
up.
got the best pizza around.
Not then.
Well, let's not go best pizza around.
Eh,
What do you mean, eh?
eh.
Who's got better pizza? Connecticut has the best pizza in the country, as far as
Detroit.
I'm concerned.
Agreed.
I've had Connecticut pizza, but it's been a very long time, but I didn't track it as my favorite. I thought it was good, but it was not my favorite
It's
ever.
not anything
Gordo, did you say Detroit?
Detroit.
It's different
Detroit
pizza,
style
though.
pizzas, to me, anything that's not a standard pizza is gimmick pizza.
Isn't
and it
that the
doesn't
sauce
count.
on top?
It's a square pan pizza.
Ugh.
It's good though.
I mean, I
outta
like
here.
pan pizza. I like Sicilian pizza. I like Chicago deep dish pizza. But I agree, those are all separate categories.
I was in Detroit last year, and I got some Detroit style pizza. But like, I think anything like that, deep dish, all that doesn't count as actual pizza. It's all gimmick pizza. It's something different. It can be good, but it doesn't count because it's not the same thing.
Although deep dish pizza, I feel like is the most like a pie.
I don't know. It just didn't stand out to me as like, oh my god, this is like the best pizza I've ever had. in
There's
my
so
life.
many good places. Like,
I've had Sally's. I've had fucking Pepe's. I've had.
yeah, but I
them
mean,
all.
like, those are like the big spots, right? Like, the interesting thing about Connecticut is like you kind of can't find a bad slice of pizza. I guess I can't speak for the entirety of Connecticut. Just like obviously the eastern side, outside of like Hartford, I guess, like within a radius. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I've just never had a bad slice down there. It's always like really fantastic.
I mean, it's pizza. Nothing mind blowing.
So the episode's essentially over here, but I think it's important to note that as the credits roll, it's the credits rolling to footage of Tony and Samantha in the back playing basketball. And unless he's been there for a while and put it up himself, Am I to believe that Angela would have a basketball net up? Because that makes no sense.
Well, it could have been from, prior. I mean, she had a husband and a young kid and could have just been there already.
Jonathan is not a basketball player.
Also, Tony made himself at home right away. I wouldn't put it past him hanging in a basketball net.
I would like to think, though, that Mona has slept with many a basketball player, so maybe she was trying to use it as an enticing tool.
All that was in the van when they moved in was just a basketball net and a pair of baggy sweatpants for Tony, and that's it.
That he wears incredibly high at one point.
Yeah, I mean, that was the conclusion of the episode, and I don't have too many other things to say about it. I did want to note that back in 2020, it was announced that the series was getting a revival with Danza and Alyssa Milano both reprising their roles.
On Freevee, of all fucking places.
But then COVID happened and everything got put on hold, and then it never ended up happening.
I hope it does. I would like to revisit these characters in modern times.
It's good to know that, like, at least those two characters are both on board to do something again, so I would want to watch. I mean, she's like Alyssa Milano. It's funny now because she this year will turn 52, which is only 3 years younger than what Mona was in this episode. So
that's crazy.
No, she'll be the horny old lady on the reboot.
I would love that. Yeah, if she takes over, she's like, you know who I miss? Remember Mona? One thing I like to point out with these shows too, though, is when we can activate a new show. So there were 3 backdoor pilots to Who's the Boss, one of which actually did make it to series. The one that didn't make it to series was a Mona show where Mona moved to New York with her brother and they run a seedy motel. So it's actually like episodes of the show. And then they realized the show wasn't going to be as good without her in it. So they were like, nah, never mind. But there is a show called Living Dolls from later on in the run of this with Leah Remini and Halle Berry in it that did make it on air. So now Living Dolls is in play for us to cover.
Oh, joy.
We know which one of us will pick it.
Okay, that tickled me. I thought that sounds fun. You don't like Leah Remini? That would have been right before.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do it, but we all know there's only one road to us doing that show, and it will be being a Joe pick.
It'll be when I eventually pick it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we cover this in pretty good length, so might as well get into the green light or cancel. So, Joe, starting with you.
Yeah, this is an easy green light. It's one of the ones, right? It's hard to divorce. We spent this entire time talking about where the characters go, or like how we remember all the different scenes from the original or post-pilot intro. Look, there's some clunky moments. There's gonna be some clunky moments. And I do agree with you. I think that maybe this is a little heavy on references. It feels like they leaned on it pretty hard. And if you didn't know who those people were, I especially can see that alienating people, right? Where like they just keep throwing things at me I don't know. That's not a joke or a reference or what I get. I really do like this. It definitely came into a like, oh, this is streaming on Hulu. This will probably be something I watch intermittently over the summer again. I hope they do make a remake or a reboot of it. They're doing all sorts of that stuff now. Why not this? I'm pro Tony Danza, and you know I'm pro Mona. This is a green light.
Ferg.
Yeah, I agree with everything Joe said. Easy green light. One great theme song. And my main factor is just the acting of Tony Danza. He just seems like such a good guy in the show that like I want to be his friend, and I wish he was my housekeeper. But fortunately, I heard he's busy. Good cast, good child acting, which, you know, we don't always get. Mona's a great character. You only got a little of her on this one, but we know she gets better. She gets a lot more screen time later. I think my least favorite in this episode was Angela. That was the show in general as a whole, but I loved it. So green light.
Nick.
Yeah, this show's not without its faults, but none of those faults are like, critical. This show is great. It's Tony Danza kills it. He's hysterical. The rest of the cast is great. I'm curious to see. I had a really hard time shutting this off. The second episode started. I watched it on Hulu, so the second episode started playing, and I had to really force myself to not keep watching. Easy green light. It's just ignoring the nostalgia too. Like obviously, there's a lot of nostalgia there. Ignoring that. It's just fun. Like I'm ready to keep watching this. I'm gonna keep watching this like tonight. So yeah, green light.
Gordo.
Hey, it's green light. Not much more to add other than what you guys said. I mean, it was just a fun show. Everybody already had good chemistry. It was funny. It was lighthearted. It was something that you could both want to watch and pay attention to, and cool to keep on in the background. It went so long for a reason. Easy green light.
So it's weird. I'm very conflicted, and I'm still conflicted. I thought Tony Danza was great in this episode, but I also had a lot of issues. I thought his character overstepped a lot. A lot of things didn't make sense to me, like in the context of what was going on. I thought the writing of this episode wasn't phenomenal. So like, I'm really struggling because is it just liking Tony Danza that makes me want to push it through? And is that really enough? And is it because I'm already a fan of his and familiar with the show? Because when I'm like dissecting this episode, there's just a lot of things wrong with it in my eye. So oh man, I'm super conflicted right now.
Oh wait. What are you about to do right here, bud?
I think I'm canceling.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm gonna
that's
cancel.
Crazy. That's like Gordo. That's Gordo level.
No,
Yeah.
I think there's reason though. Like I said, like there's a lot of listen, the nostalgia for this show is there with me. I like this show and I didn't hate this episode. But there's so many things that didn't make sense to me. The context of like him stepping in, like, hey, you can't go on this trip with her. And all the stuff that he's doing, like that didn't really make sense. And I think there were like little scenes that were kind of missing to like get the story across. Like I said, when we saw Angela's date, like I didn't know the context of what was going on. It was just, we just flash and magically she's on the end of this date and we don't know what's going on or why. I just thought there was a lot of room for improvement. I didn't hate the episode by any means, but I think if I was really blinders on, didn't know anything about this show, watched it for the first time, I don't know. I think just the fact that I know I like Tony Danza like helped me get through this episode. So it's a cancel, but I do like the show a great deal, as a matter of fact. It's a series, so. But with all that in mind, that's still 4 out of 5. So congratulations to Who's the Boss. You do live on to see another episode, but not as good as Taxi, right? Did Taxi get a perfect? I don't remember already. Did we all greenlight Taxi?
No, I canceled Taxi. No, I
so
cast
we're at
it.
a
Never
tie.
mind. I'm sorry. You're right.
So, but well, anyways, go to S1E1pod.com. That's where you can find all the links to all our stuff. Hit us up. We like talking to you guys. Let us know shows you want us to cover. And just like I said earlier in the episode, just, general, just get to know us. We like to get to know you and know where you guys are coming from, how you found us, all that stuff like that. But yeah, S1E1pod.com has all the information where you can do stuff like that. We'll catch you again next week with our 3rd episode in our 4-week extravaganza. Thank you to everyone who's listening. But until then, thank you. Goodbye.
I think you got the best, Mr. Goodmont.
Hey, yo.